Vas Mirinda Visaggio.
Forey Ackerman taught me Esperanto.
Longa nigra haro.
Which is an artificial language, and nobody uses it anymore.
Ruja libo.
But it's, you know, fun to know it, just in case.
Oh, tre bella visaggio.
That's why I felt I could solve the riddle of dolphin communication, even though it was a very alien language. It's just this thing where I can look at a page of a foreign language and pretty much know what it says.
Another part of conventions are appearances. There are panel discussions and question and answer sessions with fans.
Some fanboy would stand up and say, I want to hear you make a really loud, piercing scream. And she'd go, okay, and
She knows how to work a crowd.
But I always saved like the last few minutes to put in an ecology message.
She gave an hour lecture.
it was almost like a little bait and switch going on there.
And I realized that she was not only a beautiful body, but had a fantastic brain.
It's our responsibility to take care of the animals because the animals can't talk for themselves.
She could be a pet psychic, I think, if she wanted to, because I swear the bitch talks to animals. She does, and they talk back to her. It's the weirdest thing I've ever seen.
We need to try to live in harmony and keep these animal species alive so that our grandchildren can still see a dolphin.
In the late 80s, Brink met low-budget director Fred Olen Ray. She made 7 films with him, from the sublime to the ridiculous.
You're gonna regret this. One of my favorite movies that Fred did was called Mob Boss. I played a very inept hit woman.
Which was great, because she was little and Jack O'Halloran was huge.
Rolled over. And it was the first film that I made that actually ran on primetime television, NBC Channel 4, 8 p.m. on a Friday and a Saturday night. My parents actually got to watch one of my movies. I think this was the first one they'd seen on television. And we went out to eat the next day, and my father's saying to the waitress, "You may recognize my daughter. She was on TV last night." I'm like, "Dad, stop it."
I know that she felt very attached to her family, to her mother and her father.
It took them a long time to get used to the fact that I was no longer in college, that I wasn't going to get my doctorate degree as they had planned for.
And I think that they were very proud of what it was that she was doing, even though they didn't really understand a lot.
They didn't want to see the nudity. They didn't want to see me die horribly. So I'd have to edit my movies before I would show them. And my mom is like, 36 minutes, that's kind of a short movie. And I'm like, oh, it's a trend, they're all short now. So skillful editing, you know, at home on the VCR, just, oops, cut that scene out, lose that one.
In 1990, Fred offered Brink a role in his next opus, Haunting Fear.
Haunting Fear was probably the apex of everything we did. And we did something there that we normally wouldn't do, and I wouldn't dare do it today. I did it once in my whole life. I wrote a script that I knew was short. I wrote a 70 or 74-page script, and that's a no-no. But I did it because I thought if I had less to do each day, I could take each scene and develop it further than you would if you were rushing. Because if you're rushing, everyone comes in, they hit their marks, they say their lines, you gotta go, let's go to the next set.
There were 2 lead female characters in there. There was the main wife who's being driven crazy by her husband, and there's the role, a much smaller role of a sexy secretary. So I thought he wanted me to play the secretary.
Father.
And he's like, no, 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 I want you for the lead. I'm like, oh my God, Fred. She's in every scene. I've never done a role that big before. And he's like, you can do it.
I love the depth of Brink's performance in Haunting Fear.
Have him call me, okay?
I never would have known prior to that that she had the depth. So it was amazing to see.
It's important.
The work is just so thorough and it's so deep.
So I was very happy with that film, and I was very pleased with the way it turned out, and big money maker. Big big thumbs up in the dollar bill department, too.
I'm not going to insult you by pretending you have a chance of living through this. You won't.
Brink has probably gotten to play a lot more interesting and strong, dynamic women characters than most actresses in Hollywood.
Brink's had a lot of different characters, especially now.
Brink played a photographer who took dirty pictures. Basically, she played me, and they used my pictures for her pictures, and it was like a killer website that sucked you in and killed you or something. And the script called for Brink to be in a Sado leather hood, you know? And they showed up, and of course, no one had brought the leather hood. Well, luckily I have leather hoods here, so we did the stills of Brink with a leather hood on. And there's fans of hers out there that are like, how could you put a leather hood on Brinke Stevens, man, and take pictures of it? And I'm like, it wasn't my idea, it was in the script, you know? I mean, I would do it, but it wasn't my idea that day.
Today, she is hired by a lot of what she likes to call regional filmmakers, people without much money, without a lot of experience, but fans of both the genre and Brinke Stevens. People like D.T. Carney.
We needed a name, we needed someone, and I always, watching all Brinke's movies, I always wanted to work with her. But I really felt it was an impossibility. I didn't think we were in that league yet and all that, but I figured I'd get in touch with her and give it a shot, and I was just blown away with how friendly she was, how open to the ideas she was. So we met with her, and she decided to come on board and do Nightwalkers, and ever since then, things have just took off.
Any kid now can afford to buy a video camera.
Well, gee, can you like be in my film?
And charge up their grandmother's credit card and make a movie.
You know, she'll say, sure, fine. And she'll be the best thing in it, but the thing will stink on ice.
More power to her when she does that, it pays the bills.
She opened the movie. You know, the first thing, she jokes, this is the first movie she's been in where she got killed before the credits.
And she's like, this is a bad trend that cannot continue.
But I thought it was just so cool to open with Brink.
She's only in it like 2 minutes, and I'm like, this is just a waste of her.
But everyone wins. They get to use my name, and it gives their movie a little more credibility.
But then the next person says, well, she only worked for 2 days in that picture, so maybe we'll use her for 2 days.
The idea of a cameo really cuts down financially on a B-movie actress's pocketbook.
You sinner! You sinning little slut! Why you? Stop! Stop!
If we kept doing the movies with the actors we were using, local actors and all that, it just wouldn't catch on. And eventually we'd probably just get frustrated and stop. With Brink coming on board, I noticed Fangoria had an interest. I was getting requests for interviews. We went to conventions and we got to meet a lot of fans we wouldn't have.
How much do you worship me?
Lots.
Many of the filmmakers now are very young. Sometimes they're 19, 20, 22 years old. They started watching me when they were 10 years old. They were my fans, and they always wanted to work with me.
Brink has been, you know, an inspiration to many, many, many people.
And she'll say, oh, I do it for, you know, X dollars and blah, blah, blah. And I say, wow, Brink, you know, that's so far below your normal thing. And she'll say, yes, but this is someone who has been a fan since he was 13, and he's called and he just begged and said, would you be in the film? And she'll tell you, you know, they don't have a lot of money, it's their first film. I have the weekend open, it's okay. But just as you had to work your way up, they need to work their way up too. And it's, yes, it is just that weekend, but it took you 20 years to get to the point where it's that weekend, where somebody wants to fly you in for a weekend. And this is a business about time, and it's always diminishing.
Very often they shoot me at the very beginning to get the money shots out of the way first. They're so nervous, but I talk to them, reassure them, give them confidence.
She's such a fan of the genre that she does these movies.
She was willing to invest her time and her image and her name and her talent.
And that's why hell is full.
They're only doing this to break in. This isn't what they want to be doing. She loves what she does, and she's doing what she wants to do.
I was doing Monsterland magazine. I was kind of their mascot, Evola, and they had a contest to win a trip to Los Angeles and meet evil in person. The contest was won by a 12-year-old boy in Texas named Joey Castro.
They flew me out to Los Angeles, and when I met Brinke, she was playing a character called Evola.
He said that he wanted to eventually move to Hollywood when he grew up and to be a filmmaker.
I kept in touch with her as much as I could.
And last year, I did a movie with Joe called Terror Toons 2.
Hansel and Gretel, what adorable names. Don't I know you from somewhere?
I don't think so.
Please, can you help us? We're both very ill.
Here, drink this and eat this. It will make you feel much, much better.
There is something else that sets Brinke apart from the rest. Those other actresses sometimes called scream queens. And that's her shape.
A lot of the auditions I would go on, people would say, oh, you're never going to work in this town unless you get a breast job. They also said, you're never going to work in this town unless you get a nose job. All right, Brinke, you know what? Look at this Italian nose, okay?
Facelifts.
She doesn't have a nose.
Boob jobs.
Who's suggesting this?
Eye lifts.
Hollywood's the most unrealistic place I've ever seen.
Chin implants.
People in this business are so fucked up.
They'll cast the schlubbiest looking guy at 55.
Come on, let's go.
And they'll say, oh, who could he date?
That old guy, the scientist?
They'll pick some 25-year-old actress.
Why?
The warlord and I have been lovers for years.
That's it.
It's very hurtful when reviewers say that I'm flat-chested. I'm not. I've got a little something. Look how much you can see.
Well, thanks, but I can see plenty.
And if you had a part and she was going to have to do some nude scenes, she'd start eating Haagen-Dazs a week before. She'd just eat the... try to put some weight on her tits.
When you're a member of Screen Actors Guild, it's the only health plan that I know of that pays for boob jobs, eye lifts, Botox.
If you get breasts bigger than your head, then those are the kind of parts you're going to get.
There's so many big tits out there.
And I want to be seen as a complete being, as something with talent, you know, not just because I'm the bosom.
There's plenty of people, men and women, who love small breasts.
It's about time you two got here. I thought I'd have to party all by myself. I have a fear of knives, needles, and so on. I don't even have my ears pierced.
She wears clip-ons because she can't stand the thought of having anyone operate on her. I don't know what'll happen when she gets older in life, and you gotta make a choice.
Among her many talents is an ability with the written word. It's not surprising, considering her educational background.
In the mid-'80s, I was a production executive for Weird Tales magazine. One of the issues, I actually appear on the cover as a character, and I have a 3-part serial called The Pandora Principle that was published in that issue, which I co-wrote with A.E. Van Vogt, a very famous science fiction writer.
Well, Van Vogt had done the title and did like a 3-line synopsis. You know, a girl gets involved in a bad thing, you know, something like that. And otherwise, it was all Brinke.
Then Ted came to me and said, I've been given this script writing job and I'm just too busy. I don't have time to do it. Would you write it? I said, I don't know how to write scripts. And he said, I'll teach you everything you need to know in 5 minutes.
Brinke credits me, I think unjustly, with teaching her everything that she knows about screenwriting. I think I taught her everything I knew in 5 minutes. I taught her how to write exterior. I said, all caps and you put a period.
Ted Newsom and I then collaborated on Teenage Exorcist.
Maybe we should build a fire.
Yes, a fire. There's wood out back. And a chainsaw.
What are you doing? Cut it out! Cut it out! Stop crying! Remember me? Back here. Taking all the fun out of it.
Everything all right?
Just fine. I was only trying to cut the log, but Sally wouldn't hold still. Can you plug that in for me?
Sure. Oh, now you see, a little guacamole right there.
Sweetheart, you're my hero.
I have written a lot of short stories. I did the foreword in a book called Hot Blood 5, and I also had a story in Hot Blood 6. It's a nasty little cyber sex story. I just had a story come out called What Did They Do with the Failures, in an anthology by Rhonda Bachman.
Brink has a wide network of friends, business and personal. She is a relentless self-promoter and an experienced actress. So why, with all of this, has she never crossed over into more mainstream and frankly more lucrative projects?
At the beginning of my acting career, I thought, well, I'll just do these low-budget horror movies for a little while, and then surely I'll break into the A-list. And it never happened, and I was very surprised at that. I thought, well, I think I've got the talent, I think I've got the looks.
This is a very tough town, an extraordinarily tough town.
It's like a big musical chairs game, except there's only like 3 chairs and there's 8,000 people dancing around them.
It's a total Russian roulette.
Part of it was my unwillingness to do the casting couch.
To be a woman in this business is awful. You have to be what somebody else wants you to be. You have to not necessarily sell your soul, but there is a certain bleakness to the whole thing, and Brink hasn't been willing to embrace that.
I don't think Brink is as calculating about her career as maybe is in her best interest.
It's like swimming in a shark tank without the polite behavior.
I became a big fish in a small pond.
She is a big fish in the B-movie industry.
I became the queen of these movies.
Big fish in the little pond. It's like, now how big is the little pond? It's like a little puddle.
She might have parlayed some A-movies and been a little fish. I mean, I don't know which is better.
There is a tendency to stay in the waters that you know well. Brink doesn't really read for projects that she does now.
She doesn't like auditioning, and it's an awful process.
When you do low-budget movies, a lot of people don't want to hire you for bigger budget movies because they don't want anyone to think, oh, we're doing a low-budget movie, because sometimes the stars define the property.
Horror movies are really action movies.
Debbie Rochon so aptly said that these are action movies that we make.
You're running
with knives,
falling,
screaming,
physically fighting people.
I've been injured a lot. I was taken to the emergency room one time because a stuntman wasn't where he was supposed to be. Crashing into him, I crashed into a wall.
And on Witch House 3, Demon Fire, she fell down the stairs when she had her contact lenses in.
It was killing her to even stand. She came in crutches the next day, which was hilarious, seeing her in this witch outfit with these crutches.
You've got spunk. I like that in a lady.
In the movie Warlords, I'm supposed to get shot, but I asked the ammunitions man to squib himself first, and sure enough, it blew this hole in his stomach. It took his skin off, so he's, oops, a little too much gunpowder.
Actors are required to do a lot more dangerous things than be naked.
I had an injured back and she had an injured neck. We go, okay, let's rehearse this so we don't get hurt. And I did the shake on her neck, and then she was hurt the rest of the movie, so.
Accidents happen all the time.
It's exhausting. The conditions are not always great.
On the set, it had to be 85, 90 degrees. Do an hour and a half of makeup.
She did this photo session before that took hours and hours and hours, where she was in bondage and tied up with all these things.
You're in heels in the woods, for God's sakes.
There's horses just roaming around this ranch, and one just came up behind her and bit her. I mean, put a huge welt on her.
You really have to watch your back.
And take care of your own safety needs, because they're not going to think about that.
She told me about a film, working for a young director, obviously first-time crew, and she said, they taped me into the chair. I said, no way. I mean, I know they put the tape, but it was removable, right? They Velcroed it or whatever. No, they taped me into the chair. And I said, Brink, you sat there for 5 hours? She said, well, what are you going to do? You know that time is money. You know that the dollars are burning by. You know that they're young and they're inexperienced. And then I practically grabbed her by the shoulders and said, you must not let people tape you into a chair for 4 hours. What if the place had caught on fire?
The B-movie industry is not what it used to be. There is no middle ground anymore.
The day that you could get a couple girls like that together and a camera and in 6 days make a movie that would play on Showtime and be in Blockbuster and blah, 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 it's really been over for some time.
The question then becomes, what am I going to do?
She's done something like, 948 films. How much do you need to do to prove yourself? So she's looking, I know, at other options.
She's about 10 steps ahead of the game, my friend.
I almost have too many choices. I really want to get back to my writing. Also trying to get some of the bigger budget scripts that I've written or co-written produced, even if I have to produce them myself. Another thing I thought of was to become the godmother of horror, to find private investors and to hire all of the fabulous people that I've worked with, the wonderful actors and crew people. It's not so much about having made great movies or having been a great actress. It's more about the people I met along the way and the lives that I touched. If you can make them laugh or entertain them with one of your films,
I am not going anywhere with these sex maniacs.
if you can cheer them up or make them feel good about themselves when you meet them in person, then that to me has been the true benefit of my role in these films.
You could honestly sit there at La Jolla, out at the beach, looking at dolphins and be all like, oh, the sun on the water and Brink and everything else, and she could tell you all about the genus and everything else. Or you can sit there late at night after too many cigars and cigarettes, drinking absinthe at 4 in the morning, completely off your rocker, and that's Brink too.
There's a little bit of Brink in all of us, if we're lucky.
Life can be so difficult and there's so much negativity that you have to focus on the positive. And every day I wake up and think, this is going to be a great day. And even if it's not, if I'm having a bad day, I try to make it a good day for other people, like the girl at the checkout counter at the supermarket. I try to make eye contact and say, how are you today? Thank you. And really treat them like people. Because almost everybody's having a bad day at one time or another, so you have to focus on the positive.
We're just trying to get in this piece. That's all I'm trying to do here. Just trying to give the right answers. Be compelling. That's what I'm trying to do.
How boring. I can't think of anything dirty or trashy to say.
You want some dirt? Okay. She gave me a copy of one of her own movies to me as a birthday present instead of buying me something. There's the dirt.
I was at a barbecue once and I saw her practically attack the barbecued shrimp like an orca, and only Jane Seymour have I ever seen go after a shrimp platter more vociferously than Brink.
Pass. Next question.
Brink does have a temper, and I always used to say the only other animal in the world that stamps its feet beside a skunk when it's angry is Brinke Stevens.
Pass.
I saw her across a crowded room. She was looking back at me. This is the most beautiful woman I'd ever seen in my life. Naturally, I had to run across the room. And I picked up the magazine cover she was staring at me from, and I took it home.
I think there was one film where she was one of 3 young ladies who were getting spanked.
Does that answer the question?